Thank you for having us. My name is Ken Davis, I'm Director of Both Smart Architects, and I have, as an architect, and I have Jeffrey Kopolov, who's a Director of Interior Design of Both Smart as well. And the project we're presenting today is 17 Spring Street for Seabus property, which is obviously the tower right next to Harry Seidler there in the foreground. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Wurundjeri and Wurundjeri country in which the project is related, in which we are also presenting today. We recognise the continuing connection to land, waters and culture. The site is really interesting, situated effectively almost at the corner, not quite the corner. Harry Seidler's 1 Spring Street occupies that distinct corner, but it's a really interesting condition because it's almost the only spot where the legibility of the Hoddle grid terminates in a pure sense. Effectively on the other flanks of the city, it dissolves into other urban conditions, but we sit really at the very sort of edge of the site, and you can see the building that occupied it before the project, which was the old Mercure Hotel. Really interesting condition in that you have obviously 1 Spring Street, which is in terms of proportion extremely tall, but also very sculptural in its presentation. It holds and turns the corner. It also establishes a street wall of quite tall, slender buildings that actually work along Spring Street, and they are all, sort of without exception, very vertical in their presentation. There's no language of sort of podiums or setbacks in that, but obviously you can see the amenity aspect of it from a residential perspective is looking out to the garden. It is the key move. The project came about through a design competition in 2017. It was also a pretty interesting time in terms of planning. It was the introduction of new planning controls, effectively, that the DDO10, this is one of the first projects that went through it, where the strategy really was to talk about the definition of the edge of the city and its relationship to 1 Spring Street, to really study the transition to a taller form. And the reason for that was we have effectively one key view. The other side aspects are quite constrained by neighbouring buildings. And what we effectively have then was the idea that the building presented in one direction would become taller, slender and thinner, so reducing the depth, but also really trying to work against the idea that you needed a distinctive podium, that this was a more singular building and therefore transitioned up from some of those key elements. You can particularly see the kind of sculptural corner of 1 Spring transitioning up to the taller building. So it's a building that presents effectively as an expressed core at the rear, a wider face towards the park, obviously, to pick up those key views. It's quite constrained at the back, and then effectively, barring some 2 beds at the base of the building, almost every apartment is cross-ventilated or has 3 sides of aspect. So most of the floors are 3 to 2 to 1 apartment per floor facing east. And really this is, I guess, the beginning of the concept of the idea that felt it was inappropriate to talk about that urban condition of a distinctive podium tower where you would have setbacks on all sides but also different architectures. We're interested in much more of the idea of a sculptural palazzo, effectively taking on some of the language of both Seidler's building and also the Young and Freeman Treasury buildings further up, with the idea of this stepping and transitioning, and particularly this transition relates to the neighbouring buildings. You can see those key things. The grid of the Treasury is obviously a key inspiration for the proportions and materiality. But Spring Street generally, with its presentation to the eastern sun, the idea that we would bring the tower down to a sort of sculptural plinth of these contrasting elements that would relate to the artworks and the kind of rhythm of Seidler's work, and then transitioning its way up to the top in terms of the presentation. So you can see there it does have a podium definitively, but it's blended into a stepping transition that elongates the tower as it moves towards the skyline. We're really interested, obviously, in the materiality. This is a GRC curtain wall. It was, I guess, for us, really pushing the envelope of that materiality because it's only 20 millimetres thick. So the piers are 450 by 450, but the GRC is only 20 millimetres. So getting an aggregate, it's really hard. It's got 3 millimetres of quartz and granite in it, which is then polished. So you can't really pick that up at this distance. But what it does do is catch the light in a way that a metal, which is the sort of obvious choice for a curtain wall, doesn't do. So when you see it in person, it does have a sense of the natural light conditions across it.
GRC over a concrete frame.
A glass reinforced concrete on a curtain wall. So aluminium curtain wall. Yeah. And you can see really the lustre of that, the idea of polishing it, which is again unusual in the GRC, was to pick up on the fact that we have this granite and polished concrete blade wall. We can see the kind of stepping transition that relates to Seidler next door and the lovely way the light picks up. And then what you get really is the idea of these This is the kind of sculptural, the contrast stone, the idea of this porte cochere we've created at Throssell Lane, and that connection always to the park. The park's luminous in a sense. It always has a kind of sense of light to it. And entrances both on Spring and then on the laneway. I'll pass to Jeffrey.
Yes, look, clearly the interiors are an absolute extension of the exterior expression, creating a very sort of mannered, classical and ordered and timeless quality. If you see on the ground floor plan, the white zones are the general residence domain, with the two arrows pointing to from the porte cochere at the bottom, as well as its main entrance on Spring Street, and two principal volumes, one being the concierge arrival lobby, which is number 3, and the other one, the principal room, being the lounge. Coming from the porte cochere, you see the classical order of really a one-point perspective all the way through to that concierge. And once you're within that lounge, you can see the tapestry is a classical item in this very classical and ordered environment, in deliberate contrast to the more minimalist interior. And that tapestry itself continues the idea of the one-point perspective looking through. The portal frames in their contrasting marble accentuate the double-height volumes, and the interior carefully lit, working in consultation with electrolyte. You can see the custom designed reception desk, of course, with its bronze trim and floating fine marble edge, and the feature lighting very discreetly lighting all elements. A portal frame view through into that residence lounge, taking the most benefit of the exterior park view, and again that elongation and full verticality expressed by these very fine cruciform bronze mullions that really express again that verticality, carefully uplit. Again, looking at a tapestry, which in its own way is a sort of classical tableau, in the same way as the residents within these spaces are players within an ordered classical theme. A lot of the artwork and objet, which we selected by local Australian artists and potters. A view towards the Paul Selwood, a New South Wales sculptor's piece at the end of the lift lobby, again carefully lit with a very calm, neutral and light-filled interior. The third floor plan is the general amenities, a white area being the exterior garden, the pink zones being the public or general residence amenities, lounges, kitchens and cellars, and the two apartments overlooking the view shown in pink and orange with their terraces. The lobby, the residence lounge, very restrained but sanctuary-like swimming pool, 25 metres overlooking the rear of the Harry Seidler courtyard garden, and then some of the careful detailing and to create a very calm and I guess sanctuary-like experience in the same materiality as the exterior of the building. Typical floor plan, which is a three-plate floor plan. The larger yellow apartments has 3 bedrooms, generous cross ventilation views to 3 sides, and then the central apartment.